Well, talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm chipping in with a local perspective and probably giving all this work a kind of Women's Day approach. So bear with me, and hopefully at the end of all this we can share our local perspectives on this really fundamental topic that doesn't get a lot of airtime. So it's fantastic we've got the space today to discuss it, thanks to ECIA and the DECD. Okay, so prior to launching in, I'll just give you a little context about EPIC and what we do. Okay, so we are, as Lauren mentioned, a provider of early child intervention services. We're a fairly small provider, it's all we do. We work with around 150 families plus a year in Melbourne's North Metro Growth Corridor. Now, our service models are informed thanks to the great work of many leaders in the field in Victoria by things like family-centred practice, routines-based interventions, working with families in their natural environments, interest-based learning, positive behaviour support strategies. I think that we all have a fairly common language and understanding, or hopefully, around these concepts. In 2012, our service comprised working with families and children in their home and community settings like childcare and kinder, and also providing some centre-based activities, so short-term skills-based work that was directly with children. In 2012, we introduced the routines-based interview of Robin McWilliams, and we did that in a graduated fashion. And in 2013, it was a program-wide rollout, including an evaluation that was conducted in partnership with RMIT University. It was a pivotal moment for us in terms of it led to some really big changes in the way we practiced and a natural conclusion of short-term skills groups. So EPIC by and large became to a large extent child and family free at the centre. Oh, this is going to confuse me. Okay, so just to give you a little context, and my visuals are very simple. I've got visual envy now looking at Carl, Tim and Carol, but this is, I guess, one way to conceive of how we practice at EPIC. So we use the umbrella term routines-based early childhood intervention, and that covers all manner of characteristics for us in terms of we use the routines-based interview, we use participation-based and family level goals. McWilliams uses the word outcomes, but we also, as part of our routine practice, evaluate child and family outcomes for those participating in our services. We look at evaluating the evidence-based strategies that guide our interventions, and we also realise that this is all built upon a foundation of staff satisfaction, wellbeing, beliefs and reflective practice to drive it. Okay, so to the fun stuff. What are we actually using in terms of our evidence-based tools? How are we measuring fidelity? And what do practitioners and families think? Well, I've got a tiny little bit of time with you, so I wanted to just focus on a couple of our tools, and that is the routines-based interview and participation-based goals. So in the routines-based interview, and I know a number of us are trialling it, okay, so it basically, as Carl and Tim have really emphasised in their discussions, it gives us a way of hitting the ground running with families in terms of looking at child and family functioning, child participation in their everyday activities, their engagement, their interest, parent-child interactions, children's independence and learning in their everyday routines, and the social relationships that are going on. From this incredibly rich information, families and key workers, utilising a transdisciplinary approach, work together to come up with goals that are based completely within routine. So they are rated according to functionality, and they're also family level goals as well. So looking at these particular tools, I want to give us a way to drill into it, and I think the best way to do that is to give you a snapshot of Rory. So Rory is a little 4-year-old boy, beautiful red hair, very big interest in Thomas. His mum, Colleen, and his family came into our service last year and worked with one of our key workers, Chris. And from about the age of 18 months, his mum reported huge concerns, historically, of significant feeding difficulties for Rory. So he developed an amazing party trick of being able to projectile vomit on cue. And this started initially with meat and veggies, and then it quickly generalised to many other foods, and so his diet became more and more confined. So what was happening in the RBI that Colleen and Chris were conducting was that this information was being elicited, the family's priorities were being elicited, and particularly Colleen, Rory's mum, was incredibly concerned because Rory was about to go to 4-year-old kinder next year. He had a diet that consisted of liquid, ice cream and Nutella sandwiches, and he was going to a kinder with a no nuts policy. So it was a hugely important goal for this family to address Rory's ability to participate at kinder, given the context of what was going on in terms of his needs. So I'll show you, first of all, I'll actually show you his goal. So the family goal, I should say, was for Rory to participate in the lunchtime meal routine at home and kinder by eating a sandwich with a spread other than Nutella. And we will know he can do this when he eats a full sandwich with spread other than Nutella each day at home in kinder over a 2-week period. So this goal and the RBI were evaluated according to McWilliams' rubric. We thought, yep, functional, generalisable, let's go. And this led to the family and Chris, the key worker, discussing what interventions would be appropriate to support Rory's participation in the lunchtime routine. And they were working on using sensory-based and positive behaviour support strategies. So now let's see the video. Okay, so I hope what that gives you a tiny little taste of, and big thank you to Chris, Rory and Colleen for sharing their experience there with us, is what it looks like in practice in terms of using adult-based learning principles to drive the implementation. So we had modelling. Initially the key worker was working with mum to look at her beliefs around what was going to work, being able to provide some research-based strategies, what we knew might work for children in similar circumstances to Rory, and then adopting a model practice feedback approach. And so we have a situation where Colleen, the mum, is really confidently working on supporting Rory, and you can just see that both of them are feeling quite comfortable and happy to give this really complex change in terms of behaviours a go. So really exciting stuff. In terms of how do we continue to support practitioners like Chris in terms of implementing these really high quality interventions and doing it well, I think that initially when we're talking, bring that focus back to the routines-based interview and participation-based goals. When we did this in our organisation, we initially provided training, looked at pre-assessments in terms of knowledge and confidence, trained to those assessments, and that training that was then ongoing over the course of a year. We taped everything, so a lot of audio-visual or just audio, where we could listen to what practitioners were working with. They could actually analyse their own performance and then seek the input of the team. So this heavy reliance on reflective practice really drove through changes and also really supported practitioners in feeling like this, they had shared meaning together in making these, adopting these changes and making them work to their practice. Going hand in hand in that, Fidelity was crucial. So being able to evaluate the RBIs, being able to evaluate participation-based goals according to a set of criteria, so according to the McWilliams rubrics, and being able to support each other and continuing to use these approaches with Fidelity has been a challenge for our team, but incredibly rewarding. In fact, what's happened is that what initially was a fairly externalised process, oh, we're doing this evaluation with RMIT University, has actually become an internalised one where we see the necessity of routinely evaluating, checking what we're doing, being able to take that perspective and realise that those measurements are important for our everyday practice has I think, I sound like a bit of a preacher, but really just caused a huge paradigm shift for our team. we realise now that this fidelity question is not about an external force. It is about ensuring quality in our everyday practices. Okay, so you can't sustain these changes. I think of where one of the huge take-home messages from Carl and Tim is around changing hearts and minds. And in terms of the partnership with RMIT, qualitative interviews were conducted with key workers, and they were asked, how did you find the implementation? What did you think about it? What were the processes like for you? And what key workers reported was that it was incredibly useful to initially work with families in terms of getting this rich information, this huge amount of data, and being able to actually explore with families their own well-being, their everyday life, what those interactions were like, and have a common language around why this stuff was so important. In fact, the implications for this in terms of consumer-centred models of funding, where we have to get information to families in a really accessible way about why what they do every hour of every day really counts, is huge. The other thing that staff reporting was that it took so much time. Time to do, time to write up, that was really tricky. And I think, sorry, not enough saliva. I think that what happens is that, as Carl and Tim said, if time is onerous, if there was a sense that it's not worth it, then you lose them. You lose practitioners and you lose families. So it's that whole nuanced issue of how do you continue to focus on the meaning that you're getting to make it worthwhile. And practitioners said they were able to do this, but they were by seeing that it was immediately useful and valuable and functional to have this information and to directly translate it into participatory goals. What they did notice, though, was that for families where there was poor engagement, or families who maybe weren't so sure that they should be in early childhood intervention in the first place, then the importance of reflective practice to guide next steps was paramount. So I'd love to show you a tiny little bit, is that possible, of Colleen reflecting on the intervention that she had implemented with her son Rory. I think that really gives life to her own confidence and competence in supporting Rory's feeding behaviours in this instance. You can see that Colleen is a mum who has owned these changes. They belong to her. She's confident, and you can absolutely see that she's going to keep on giving these things a go. I'm going to sum up quickly because I know Lauren's been generous with me. To tie all these threads together, I think it's important to reflect on what drives us all to be in early childhood intervention, to work with families with developmental concerns as we do. And looking around the room, I can think it's probably not about the money. And even though it can be nice, it's probably not about the recognition either. If EPIC's any indication, it might be a little bit about our shared love of baked goods. Overall, what drives us all is the value we place on working with families at such a pivotal time in their lives. Like the ECIA adage says, we want to get it right from the start. We aim to partner with families to build a strong foundation from which they can provide ongoing care for their kids. However, like any good builder, we need to make sure that we're providing the absolutely best quality materials we can, that our measurements are sound. We have such a short time with families that we need to know we're doing everything we can to make that time count. For the very reasons that we're all sitting here today, we need to continue to invest and emphasise the importance of evaluating what we do and the way we do them, the way we do the practices that we do. If that can be part of our everyday practice, then we will all be a little bit closer, I think, to doing what we all aspire to do, and that's deliver evidence-based practice. Thank you.